and I think you and I touched on this in our previous conversation, but I think from a crisis standpoint, it wasn't necessarily a crisis for businesses, let's say, from the very beginning. But now, the longer things are locked down, so to speak, it's actually turning into a really significant crisis for businesses, in the sense that, okay, you can go 1 or 2 months maybe without income, but even big businesses, if you took a bank and said, listen, we're cutting off absolutely all of your income for 4 or 5 months, that's a huge stress, even for big banks. For small businesses, it's devastating. And so I think that there's something here around, there's going to be a lot of crisis management happening by people that have never had experience managing themselves through this before. Luckily, let's say in this part of the world, there've been it's kind of a cyclical economy, so you get a crisis every few years. But in that sense, how do people understand when it's really a crisis?
Well, I mean, I just want to make a comment on that. You're right, of course, but the counter to that is that the governments have understood how severe this is. And if you look at the actions taken in the UK and in the US, you know, they've opened the back doors of the Fed and, you know, told people it's like looting the Fed. You know, they basically said, okay, you know, $3 trillion should do it. And I mean, that money goes into the economy. Of course, down the line, you end up with a problem with inflation, and you know that will come back to haunt people. And actually, I was reading stuff today about the fact that the jobs actually look better than people had forecast, because you know the number of unemployed has fallen because people have gone back into the restaurant trade in the US. And the danger there is that then the federal authorities will start cutting off some of this support, and then that will trigger other problems. So I think in the short term, it's varied by country. So as you know, here in Russia, the SMEs have really been hung out to dry. I mean, there's been very little real support for them. Whereas I think in the UK and in the US, there has been such enormous support that it sort of delayed some of the impact of the crisis. So, and again, you're right to talk about this, the ongoing need for crisis management. Maybe we should talk about the different types of crisis that occur. So obviously, I mean, we don't need to get into the whole gory detail because it would take longer than we have. Mm-hmm. But if we talked about the types of crisis, the broad types obviously are: is it a single event? Is it a systemic event and ongoing? Is it an external event, which what this one is? Or is it internal? But obviously an external event like the virus can create a macro event, which is the economic crisis. But then as it gets played out by individual companies and individual managements, then that risk then becomes the risk of how are those individual companies reacting to the environment. So you start from, okay, is this, one hopes it's a single event. Of course, if there's a second wave, you know, then you have the whole impact of the second wave. But let's for a moment assume that it's just one time. Then it's a single event that then creates this ripple effect, because it then goes from a global event to an industry event, macro industry event, and then it gets interpreted at company level. And by the way, interestingly, also at individual level. So this ripple sort of goes from the outside in. And according to how each of these stages, how the politicians react, how the industry leaders react, how the companies react, how the individuals react, it either amplifies the impact or it diminishes the impact. And obviously the trick of crisis management, the idea is that you get ahead of it, and you can't remove the risk, because certainly when it's external, you can't remove the external risk, but you manage your business in a way that you diminish the impact by taking certain actions. Mm-hmm. And in fact, actually, I think I mentioned this to you before, is that the best crisis management by far is to see the crisis coming before your competitors. And we're all a bit late for that now. Yeah. But you know, if you were smart and you saw the Chinese event, the pandemic starting, and then you understood the nature of the disease, and you could then forecast that this was going to roll out and at some stage hit your business, well, you could take certain actions in terms of positioning your business to be in the best possible shape to withstand that impact. And
you could invest in Zoom.
Well, for instance, yeah, exactly. Damn it. If you're a banker, and I was in this position several times, and actually it's what I did in 2008 with HSBC ahead of the August-September shock in Russia.
Mm-hmm.
The best way of dealing with it is to get your loans that you think are going to be a problem, you get those repaid. And you get them repaid either by pricing up, you increase pricing, you increase you strengthen the covenants, you just make yourself very difficult to deal with. And that causes your clients, the bad clients you want to get rid of, to say, okay, we've had enough of you, and they go off and they borrow money from your competitor, which is a double benefit. One is you don't have to deal with the remedial management of having to work out that loan. And the even better news is that your competitor is then weighed down with all the problems that you've just given them. So it's a very satisfying thing to do, but you have to be able to spot the crisis coming. Mm-hmm. So, and in fact, where we are right now is, I think everybody's got it. We are in the crisis, and now it's going to be a question of how you navigate the risks that have been thrown up by this global event.
Mm-hmm.